Hello to all the literary travelers. Welcome to Literary Journeys with River. This time, we will delve into the fascinating world of On the Way to the Wedding, the 8th book in the acclaimed Bridgerton series by Julia Quinn. Throughout this video, I'll provide a detailed chapter-by-chapter summary of this wonderful story, highlighting the most important moments and the emotions our beloved characters experience. Remember, this video is a chapter-by-chapter summary, not the entire book. Our goal is for you to enjoy the essence of the story and feel encouraged to read the book if you haven't done so yet. So get ready for an exciting literary journey filled with romance, drama, and adventures in the world of the Bridgertons. Let's begin. Prologue. On a hot summer day in 1827, Gregory Bridgerton was desperately running through the streets of London, his lungs burning as he rushed towards St. George's Church in Hanover Square. His mind was focused on a single mission: to stop a wedding. Passers-by watched him with curiosity, but he didn't stop, ignoring everything around him, driven by a steady and powerful rhythm that kept him moving. He didn't know how long he had been running, but he knew he couldn't stop. The ceremony had started at 11, and he had to get there before it was too late. Every second counted, but time seemed to mock him, stretching and contracting senselessly as he ran. His desperation grew with every step, aware that the wedding should not take place. In his race, Gregory stumbled into a gentleman, knocking over his briefcase, but he didn't stop to apologize or pick it up. His only goal was the church. A carriage momentarily blocked his way, forcing him to stop and catch his breath. But as soon as it passed, he resumed his run with renewed determination. The sight of the church steeple and the decorative flowers hanging from the lampposts reminded him of the urgency of his mission. Upon reaching the church, Gregory hurried up the steps and flung open the door, interrupting the ceremony and capturing everyone's attention. The church fell silent as all eyes turned to him. Gasping for breath, he walked down the aisle, repeatedly declaring his love for the bride. His presence had a visible impact on her. Her bouquet fell to the floor, and her expression reflected surprise. With each step, Gregory got closer, his words filled with sincerity and desperation. Finally, he knelt and asked her to marry him. The tension in the church was palpable. Everyone held their breath, waiting for her response. The bride's eyes shone with emotion and doubt as she looked at the man she was about to marry. In a moment of decision, her lips trembled, and her clear voice gave the answer Gregory longed for. Chapter 1. Gregory Bridgerton believed in true love. It was hard not to in a family like his, where all his brothers and sisters had found happiness in their marriages. Anthony, Daphne, Benedict, Colin, Eloise, Francesca, and even Hyacinth all enjoyed genuine love with their spouses. Gregory was convinced that one day he too would find the woman of his dreams and live that same happiness. He didn't have a clear image of who that woman would be. He didn't know if she would be tall or short, blonde or brunette, but he was sure he would know her the moment he saw her. In the meantime, he saw no reason not to enjoy life. Gregory lived comfortably in London, with many friends and plenty of invitations to dinners and social events. Despite his family's expectations, especially his older brother Anthony's, that he should find a purpose in life, Gregory preferred to wait patiently for love to come into his life. He was at Aubrey Hall, the family residence in Kent, for a party organized by his sister-in-law Kate. Arriving late, he knew he had to apologize to her, and as he crossed the garden, he thought about how hungry he was, hoping the food would be plentiful. Suddenly, he saw her, a young woman with a lock of blonde hair curling over her shoulder. Gregory froze, knowing she was the one. He felt an overwhelming certainty, an intensity he had never experienced before. He moved slowly towards her, forgetting his hunger and the need to apologize to Kate. Upon arriving, the young woman, Hermione Watson, was talking to her friend Lucinda Abernathy. Gregory introduced himself and, using a clever tactic, kissed Lucinda's hand first before introducing himself to Hermione. Hermione was the young woman who had captured his attention with her blonde hair and green eyes. As they chatted, Gregory felt an increasing attraction to Hermione, though he also showed courtesy and kindness towards Lucinda. Hermione declined Gregory's invitation to dance, claiming she didn't dance well. Gregory then invited Lucinda, who accepted with a forced smile. As they danced, Gregory couldn't take his mind off Hermione, convinced he had found the love of his life. He was determined to get to know her better and win her heart, though the path would not be easy. Chapter 2. Gregory Bridgerton, ever the gentleman, concealed his disappointment as he offered his arm to Lady Lucinda and accompanied her to the makeshift dance floor. Despite his upbringing, he couldn't help but feel that he had been waiting his whole life to meet someone like Hermione Watson, and now he had to dance with her friend. However, he saw an opportunity in this, knowing that Lucy's friendship could be his best ally in getting to know Hermione better. As they waited for the music, Gregory struck up a conversation with Lucy. He learned that both young women had been at Aubrey Hall since the previous day and that Lucinda had studied with Hermione at Miss Moss's school. With a bit of effort, Gregory steered the conversation towards Hermione, trying to learn more about the young woman who had captured his heart at first sight. Lucy, noting Gregory's insistence on talking about Hermione, informed him that Hermione was in love with someone else. This news unsettled Gregory, but at the same time, it soothed his pride, as it was better to think that Hermione was interested in someone else than to accept her total indifference towards him. Determined not to give up, Gregory convinced himself that he had to show Hermione that he was the right man for her. During their walk, Lucy remarked with some resignation on the constant attention Hermione received and the reactions of men upon meeting her. Gregory, though distracted by Hermione's presence in the distance, tried to remain polite and attentive to his companion, but he couldn't help feeling frustrated by the situation. Kate Bridgerton, Gregory's sister-in-law, approached them to say hello and inform them that Hermione had retired due to a cold. Gregory, feeling a missed opportunity, bid farewell to Lucy, who went to check on her friend. Meanwhile, in her room, Hermione was reading a letter from Mr. Edmonds, her beloved. Lucy, accustomed to this routine, watched patiently. Despite knowing that Hermione's love for Edmonds was complicated by class differences and social expectations, Lucy couldn't help feeling a mix of concern and resignation for her friend's future. Hermione defended her love passionately, arguing that one cannot choose whom to fall in love with. Lucy, on the other hand, tried to be pragmatic, suggesting that life would be easier if Hermione fell in love with someone more acceptable to her family. The conversation ended unresolved, with Hermione clinging to her feelings and Lucy feeling increasingly frustrated. Lucy mentioned Gregory Bridgerton, highlighting that he seemed interested in Hermione, but Hermione dismissed him, focused on her impossible love. Lucy, almost engaged to Lord Hazelby, couldn't understand Hermione's resistance to considering someone more suitable. That night, Lucy decided she would do everything possible to get Hermione to consider Gregory, convinced that he was perfect for her friend. The next day, she would begin working on it, hoping Hermione would finally come to her senses and accept that sometimes dreams must adjust to reality. Chapter 3. The day dawned splendidly, with the sun shining high as Gregory prepared for breakfast. His sister-in-law, Kate, appeared with a suggestive smile, proposing a trip to the village, ostensibly to support the local shopkeepers. Gregory, though sarcastic, accepted the idea when Kate suggested that the ladies needed escorts, hinting that he should be one of them. When Kate offered to let him choose his companion, Gregory confessed his interest in Hermione Watson, despite Kate having thought of another young woman, Lady Lucinda. Hermione and Lucy, her inseparable friend, were also getting ready for the outing, commenting on the typical routine of buying ribbons and bows at every party. As they gathered with the others at Aubrey Hall, Lady Bridgerton organized the groups, pairing Hermione with Gregory and Lucy with Neville Burbrook, a somewhat clumsy relative. Along the way to the village, Gregory tried to engage Hermione in conversation, who remained reserved and distant. Though Gregory felt a deep connection and wanted to know her better, Hermione kept her mind elsewhere, clearly affected by someone else. Lucy, observing the situation, resolved to make her friend consider Gregory as a viable option, aware that a liaison with Mr. Edmonds would be a disaster for Hermione. Upon reaching the village, Neville suggested having lunch in the countryside, which was well received by everyone. Gregory took charge of organizing the picnic while trying, with little success, to gain Hermione's attention. Neville, for his part, was enthusiastic and somewhat eccentric, chattering about his passion for painting and his new singularity. During lunch, Gregory tried to maintain the conversation and get closer to Hermione, feeling again and again that special connection, though she seemed distracted. However, his determination did not waver. Gregory was resolved to win Hermione Watson's heart, even if the path seemed full of obstacles. Chapter 4. Lucy watched as Mr. Bridgerton tried to win Hermione's favor, but she noticed that his attempts were too obvious and passionate. Hermione, having seen this type of courtship countless times, was not impressed. Though Gregory was charming, intelligent, and handsome, his excessive attention and apparent infatuation did not set him apart from Hermione's other admirers. Lucy decided to intervene, aware that Hermione deserved better than Mr. Edmonds, her current interest. In the middle of the picnic, Lucy suggested Gregory accompany her to see some flowers. At first, he didn't catch the hint, but eventually he got up and followed her. Once alone, Lucy explained that he was doing everything wrong. To win Hermione, he needed to act differently, stop showing so much interest, and give her some space. Though Gregory felt hurt in his pride, he eventually accepted Lucy's advice, who assured him she knew Hermione well and that her strategy would work. During the dinner and the piano recital that followed, Gregory put Lucy's advice into practice. He avoided Hermione, sat far from her, and behaved distantly, which did not go unnoticed by Lucy or his sister-in-law Kate. The latter, seeing the situation, offered her help so that Gregory could sit next to Hermione at the following night's dinner. Throughout the evening, Gregory felt frustrated to see that Hermione barely noticed his absence, increasing his impatience and desire to get closer to her. However, his sister-in-law Kate assured him that all this was for the best, as it would give him time to reflect on his true feelings for Hermione. Meanwhile, Lucy watched Gregory and Hermione, aware that her advice was partially working. However, the situation was tense, and Gregory couldn't help but feel attracted to Lucy, noticing something special in her that he found difficult to define. This unexpected connection complicated matters further for Gregory, who now struggled between his original plan to win Hermione and his new feelings for Lucy. At the end of the night, when Lucy left the music room, Gregory followed her and discreetly led her to the library, seeking a private conversation. They looked at each other with a mix of curiosity and tension, aware that the next step could change the dynamics between them irreversibly. Chapter 5. Lucy was walking down the hall, trying to remember where the nearest bathroom was when she suddenly bumped into the warm and decidedly human body of Gregory Bridgerton. He led her to the library and closed the door, keeping the key in his pocket. Lucy, surprised, wondered why Gregory wanted to talk to her in private. Gregory explained that he wanted to discuss Hermione, specifically the advice Lucy had given him. Gregory complained that her advice hadn't worked, which Lucy admitted, but she also defended that, under normal circumstances, the strategy should have worked. Hermione was different. She had rejected all the men who had tried to woo her. Gregory expressed his frustration, and Lucy tried to find a solution. Lucy explained that Hermione was used to being courted by men who didn't give up, which only increased her disinterest. Gregory, with an intensity that left Lucy speechless, told her that he didn't see Hermione as a prize, but that he genuinely cared about her. This sincere sentiment moved Lucy, but also reminded her of how difficult it would be to change the situation. During the conversation, Lucy realized that Gregory truly loved Hermione. He was willing to risk everything for love, an idea Lucy couldn't fully comprehend. Lucy admitted she wasn't sure if she herself would be able to take such a risk. Gregory urged her to think about what she really felt and told her that true love would be something she would just know. Gregory's intensity made Lucy feel vulnerable and lost. He described how love should consume a person, something Lucy had never experienced. At that moment, she understood that she was not destined to feel such a passionate and absolute love. She preferred a more controlled and safe life, even if that meant giving up passion and ecstasy. Finally, Lucy offered to talk to Hermione on Gregory's behalf, but he rejected the idea, wanting to handle it himself. She suggested he wait or continue trying to woo her. Though Gregory was disappointed and frustrated, Lucy encouraged him, assuring him that Hermione would eventually realize he was the right man for her. Gregory, feeling an internal conflict, looked at Lucy and realized her elegance and grace. However, he knew she was not the woman he had been waiting for. Despite his growing admiration for Lucy, Gregory decided they should return to the others before the situation became more complicated. They both left the library, aware of the tension and complexity of their feelings, but determined to face the challenges that awaited them. Chapter 6. Lucy spent the night thinking about the embarrassing conversation she had with Gregory. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, completely still and mortified by what she had said. The next morning, with pronounced dark circles under her eyes, she prepared to face the day. Although she felt ridiculous for having said that Gregory was much better than the others, she knew she had to continue with her routine. As they went down to breakfast, Hermione noticed that Lucy seemed a bit off and asked if she was okay. Lucy lied, saying she was doing sums in her head, something Hermione accepted without question. Despite not wanting to face Gregory or anyone else, Lucy knew she had to have breakfast. In the dining room, Lucy felt uncomfortable at the possibility of encountering Gregory. She finally decided to pretend she wasn't hungry, making up an excuse about a stomach ache. Concerned, Hermione accompanied her back to their room, where Lucy lay down and asked her friend to go down and get something to eat for her. At breakfast, Gregory felt better, determined to forget what had happened the night before. He tried to concentrate on the food and trivial thoughts like Newtonian physics. However, his tranquility was disturbed when Hermione appeared alone at the door. Surprised by her presence without Lucy, Gregory invited her to join him. Hermione accepted the invitation, mentioning that she would only stay for a while because Lucy was sick and she had promised to bring her a tray. During breakfast, Gregory made efforts to keep a conversation with Hermione, telling her about a vivid dream he had. Although Hermione seemed distant at first, she gradually began to open up, even laughing and sharing anecdotes about her brother. Gregory felt triumphant at getting Hermione to talk and relax in his company. The conversation flowed better than expected, and Gregory felt like a king. Hermione thanked him for his company and, before leaving, mentioned that Lucy enjoyed breakfast more than any other meal, a revelation that Gregory found charming. After breakfast, Hermione returned to the room with a tray full of food for Lucy. When she mentioned Gregory's talk about dreams, Lucy immediately became interested and asked for more details about their interaction. Hermione confessed that, although she initially thought Gregory was crazy, she had had a lot of fun with him and had felt a sort of tingling. Hermione was confused by her feelings, admitting that although she loved Mr. Edmonds, she had felt something for Gregory. Lucy encouraged her to take her time to decide, reminding her that marriage is an important decision. Though Hermione was still conflicted, she seemed more willing to consider Gregory as a potential option. Suddenly, a maid entered the room to inform Lucy of the unexpected arrival of her brother, Lord Fensworth. Surprised and worried, Lucy decided to go down immediately to see him, accompanied by Hermione. Both friends hurried down to the pink drawing room, intrigued by the unexpected visit and what it might mean. Chapter 7. Gregory was chatting with his sister-in-law in the breakfast parlor when the butler announced the arrival of an unexpected guest, Lord Fensworth, Lady Lucinda's elder brother. Gregory decided to accompany her to the pink drawing room to greet the young earl, as he had nothing better to do and was curious to meet Lucy's brother, of whom Hermione had spoken. Gregory had heard that Fensworth was a scholarly and pedantic type who preferred to stay in Cambridge even outside of term time. Upon reaching the pink drawing room, he found a tall, athletic young man with a gravitas that made him seem older. Despite his shyness, Fensworth conducted himself with aplomb, and Gregory felt an immediate sympathy for him. However, it soon became clear that Fensworth was also in love with Hermione Watson. Gregory noticed the anticipation in the young Earl's eyes when he asked if Miss Watson would be joining them. Though Fensworth still seemed likable, the competition for Hermione's affection was becoming annoying. Kate, Gregory's sister-in-law, took charge of the conversation with the young Earl, offering hospitality and asking if his visit was due to some mishap. Fensworth explained that his uncle had asked him to pick up Lucy and bring her home to discuss an important matter. Gregory noticed that Fensworth didn't seem in a hurry to leave and accepted Kate's invitation to stay until Friday, mentioning a masquerade ball planned for Thursday night. Just then, Lady Lucinda and Miss Watson entered the room. Fensworth murmured that he would stay until Friday, clearly more interested in Hermione than his sister. Lucy, puzzled, asked her brother what he was doing there, but he replied evasively, assuring her they would talk later. Kate, sensing the tension, suggested everyone have something to eat. Gregory took the opportunity to invite Hermione for a walk in the garden, which she gladly accepted. As Gregory and Hermione headed to the garden, Lucy accompanied her brother and Kate to the breakfast parlor. Richard, her brother, began a trivial conversation, asking about school, Hermione, and other unimportant topics. Lucy, increasingly impatient, demanded to know the real reason for his visit. Richard finally revealed that their Uncle Robert wanted to talk to her about her imminent marriage. Although Lucy had always known she would eventually have to marry Lord Hazelby, she felt suddenly overwhelmed by the immediacy of the news. The idea of going from schoolgirl to wife without enjoying a period of freedom and fun made her feel empty and uprooted. Richard tried to console her, assuring her that Hazelby was not a bad man and that he wouldn't harm her. He also mentioned that her wedding would be a grand celebration in London, with Hermione as her maid of honor. Though Lucy appreciated her brother's attempts to cheer her up, she couldn't help feeling disoriented. Finally, Richard placed a small wildflower on the lapel of her dress, commenting that the color suited her. Touched by the gesture, Lucy decided to stay outside for a while to clear her thoughts. Richard, noting her need to be alone, left her in peace, promising to see her at lunch. Lucy stared at the meadow, trying to absorb the news and find some solace in the tranquility of the countryside. Although she had always known her future was decided, she couldn't help feeling trapped and out of control of her own life. Chapter 8. Gregory was delighted with the combination of strategy and good judgment that had led him to walk through the gardens with Miss Watson. They had spent a charming time together, and Lord Fensworth had been relegated to his sister Lucy's company. Gregory had successfully remembered the names of several plants, which had impressed both himself and Hermione. He had made Miss Watson laugh twice, and although she hadn't done the same for him, Gregory frequently smiled in her presence. It was nice to feel in control of himself again, without the tightness in his chest that he usually felt when looking at the back of Hermione's neck. Walking alone towards the pond, Gregory found Lady Lucinda sitting on a stone bench. She looked vulnerable and tired, something very unusual for her. Gregory approached her, and after a few courtesies, discovered that Lucy had received some troubling news from her brother, although she downplayed its importance. During their conversation, Gregory mentioned that he had gone to the lake to think, and Lucy, surprised, commented that he didn't seem like the type who needed to get away to reflect. Gregory noticed her curiosity and revealed that her brother, Lord Fensworth, was in love with Hermione. Lucy expressed disbelief and vehemently denied it, stating that her brother was interested in another girl. However, Gregory was convinced that Fensworth had feelings for Hermione, leading to a friendly but firm argument between them. The debate shifted to the problem of Mr. Edmonds, and in an attempt to change the subject, Lucy confessed that Hermione didn't know how to dance, something that surprised Gregory. The revelation was an attempt by Lucy to console Gregory about his own lack of skill. This unexpected confession made Gregory and Lucy share a laugh, relieving the tension between them. As they walked back to the house, the conversation flowed more freely, with Gregory admitting his flaws in marksmanship and Lucy offering to teach him. Their relationship seemed to be evolving, and both felt more comfortable in each other's company. Reaching the door of the drawing room, Lucy apologized for having distracted Gregory from his intention to go to the lake to think. He, however, surprised her by saying that at that moment, he didn't want to be alone. This exchange, although brief, left both with a sense of connection they couldn't explain. Without fully understanding why, they both felt closer, though they were still unaware of the deep meaning of this feeling. The truth about their own hearts remained hidden as they continued their interaction, unaware of the direction in which their paths were leading them. Chapter 9. The masquerade ball promised to be a memorable event. Although it wouldn't be too large, since Anthony, Gregory's brother, wouldn't have allowed his country life to be disturbed too much, it would be the perfect culmination for the country party. With all the guests, the country house was full, and some would have to stay in neighboring houses or nearby inns. Kate, Gregory's sister-in-law, had originally planned a costume party, but after a look from Anthony, she had reconsidered, opting instead for a masquerade ball. Gregory arrived at the ballroom at the agreed time, being one of the first to arrive along with Anthony and Kate. Conversations and laughter soon filled the room, with the guests feeling bolder and more uninhibited under their masks. Gregory was eager to see Hermione Watson, but after an hour, he was beginning to get anxious about her absence. Although he searched among the masked women, he couldn't find her. However, he did find Lucy, whose presence brought him a sense of tranquility. Lucy, in her usual direct manner, began talking to him about the food, recommending the cucumber and cheese sandwiches, a detail that brought a smile to Gregory's face. As they chatted, Gregory noticed the genuine happiness in Lucy's eyes, a quality he didn't see often. They decided to dance together, and the waltz was perfect, with the music elevating them and making them feel as one. When it ended, Gregory couldn't help but praise Lucy for her dancing skills, a comment she thanked with a sincere smile. However, his concern for Hermione persisted. Lucy mentioned that Hermione had been with her brother Richard, which made Gregory even more anxious, remembering Richard's evident interest in Hermione. The idea of the two of them being alone outside the ballroom seemed dangerous to him. Despite Lucy's confidence in her brother, Gregory insisted that they should look for them. Lucy suggested finding Kate to help them, but Gregory firmly opposed, fearing that Kate's intervention could precipitate a forced engagement if something improper was discovered. However, before they could act, Kate appeared, and Gregory had no choice but to explain the situation to her. Kate, understanding the potential danger, immediately joined the search. Lucy still trusted in her brother's decency, but Gregory's insistence and Kate's reaction filled her with doubts and fear. With their hearts in their throats, the three of them headed to the gardens, determined to find Hermione and Richard before something irrevocable happened. The tension in the air was palpable, and Gregory realized that the night, which had started with so much promise, could end with a life changed forever. Chapter 10. Lucy followed Gregory and Lady Bridgerton down the hall, feeling a growing anguish. A knot in her stomach and shallow breathing kept her in a state of confusion. Although she knew she had to focus on the search, her mind wandered, dominated by a sense of imminent doom. She didn't understand why she felt this way, given that she had always wished for Hermione to marry her brother Richard. Having Hermione as her sister in name would be a dream come true. However, a feeling of unease and anger overwhelmed her. Gregory suggested they search separately, but Lady Bridgerton opposed, arguing that it wasn't appropriate for Gregory to find Miss Watson alone. Lucy, not knowing the house well, agreed that it was best to stay together. With a hurried step, they began opening doors, inspecting the rooms. Suddenly, Lucy stumbled upon a couple in a compromising situation. Embarrassed, she quickly closed the door and alerted the others. Gregory identified the couple as Mr. Morley and Mrs. Winstead, a revelation that left everyone surprised. As they continued the search, Lucy remembered a place where Richard might have taken Hermione, the greenhouse. Determined, she slipped away and ran there. Upon arrival, She felt a wave of panic and stood paralyzed in front of the door, unable to open it. Just then, Gregory caught up with her, worried about her state. Lucy, full of remorse, tried to explain what had happened. Lady Bridgerton appeared shortly after, and together they decided to enter the greenhouse. Inside, darkness and silence enveloped them. Lady Bridgerton called out to Richard, and soon they heard a faint noise. Gregory moved towards the sound, finding Richard. A fight broke out between the two men, but it was interrupted by the appearance of Hermione, led by Lady Bridgerton. Hermione, with her dress wrinkled and hair disheveled, apologized between sobs. Shortly after, Hermione and Richard announced their engagement. Back at the party, Lucy couldn't concentrate on anything. Gregory, on the other hand, took refuge in his brother's study, drinking brandy and reflecting on the situation. He had lost Hermione, and the future seemed uncertain. Trying to drown his sorrow, he got drunk, questioning what to do now that his plans had changed drastically. Love had triumphed for Richard and Hermione, but for Gregory and Lucy, the night ended with a bitter twist of fate. Gregory, immersed in confusion and sadness, wondered what his next step would be, while the brandy offered him temporary solace amid his desolation. Chapter 11. Lucy returned to her room, reflecting on the irony of recent events. She was alone, after all the commotion caused by Hermione's disappearance, a marriage proposal, and her own inadvertent departure from the masquerade ball. Lady Bridgerton had forced her back to the party, leaving her under the supervision of a spinster aunt. As she watched the ballroom, Lucy was amazed at how life continued as usual for the other guests, unaware of the drastic changes that had affected 4 people that night, including Mr. Bridgerton, whose plans had changed dramatically. At the edge of the ballroom, Lucy felt invisible and yet acutely aware of her own emotions. Apparently, nothing had changed for the others, who continued dancing and laughing. Lucy, however, saw herself reflected in a mirror as the same as always, although she felt different. Determined to get away from the noise, Lucy ventured toward the north wing of the house, a restricted area, but after the tumultuous night, she felt she deserved a bit of respite. She found a closed door that, to her surprise, opened easily. Walking down the dark hallway, she unexpectedly encountered Mr. Bridgerton. They exchanged words, recognizing the strangeness of finding each other alone there. Gregory Bridgerton had been meditating in his brother's study, reflecting on the night's events. Lucy, for her part, was also lost in her thoughts. The encounter became increasingly intimate. Despite the gravity of the situation with Hermione and Richard, and Lucy's engagement to Lord Hazelby, an undeniable attraction arose between her and Gregory. The dark and lonely hallway became the setting for a moment of deep and forbidden connection. The tension between them culminated in a soft and captivating kiss, a moment that paralyzed Lucy and transformed her perception of everything. Desire and need mixed in a surge of feelings that she could neither stop nor wanted to. However, the reality of Lucy's engagement and the implications of their actions soon overwhelmed her. With a mix of sadness and resolution, Lucy pulled away, stating that they couldn't continue. Gregory insisted on accompanying her to her room, worried for her safety. Lucy reluctantly agreed, recognizing the authority and firmness in his voice. In the end, Lucy reached her room and knocked on the door 3 times, just as Gregory had asked, signaling that she had arrived safely. As she prepared to face an uncertain tomorrow, a part of her couldn't help but long to see Gregory again, despite the circumstances that separated them. Chapter 12. Gregory sat down for breakfast and found Kate already present, visibly disheartened. She apologized immediately, but Gregory, tired of the constant apologies of the past few days, interrupted her, trying to keep his composure. Despite his attempt to focus on his food, he noticed Kate's unease, who finally spoke again, wanting to know how he was feeling. Gregory, curt, denied being affected. Kate, trying to comfort him, recalled how they had met years ago, pointing out the age difference between Gregory and his brothers. Gregory, not in the mood for conversation, listened as Kate changed the subject repeatedly. Finally, she mentioned that Lady Watson had calmed down after accepting her daughter's engagement to Fensworth, aware of his title as Earl. As they talked, Gregory realized the irrationality of his anger. He had never imagined he wouldn't win Miss Watson over, having made progress with her, though now everything had fallen apart. Kate informed him that all the guests would leave that very afternoon, each one separately. Lucy was among those plans. Gregory, feeling an inexplicable urgency to see her, abruptly left his breakfast, ignoring Kate's questions. Despite his foul mood, he needed to find Lucy. Meanwhile, Lucy looked at her trunks, feeling exhausted and confused. Hermione entered the room, apologizing for the previous night and assuring Lucy that she had never hidden anything about her relationship with Richard. Lucy, though hurt, accepted her friend's explanations, who continued talking about her sudden love for Richard. Hermione described how being with Richard gave her a sense of home and security, something Lucy understood but which pained her even more. Hermione detailed how she had discovered her true feelings for Richard, highlighting the difference from her initial attraction to Mr. Edmonds. As Hermione spoke, Lucy, remembering her own kiss with Gregory, realized she was also in love with him. This revelation filled her with despair, as her engagement to Hazelby was imminent. Finally, Lucy and Hermione said their goodbyes, with Hermione reminding her that they would be countesses and everything would be fine. Lucy, trying to maintain her composure, faked a smile as her trunks were loaded into the carriage. Gregory found Lucy in the gazebo, watching the trunks being loaded. He called out to her, and as she turned, he noticed a look of sadness on her face. Gregory apologized for his behavior, but Lucy, curtly, accepted the apology, asking him to forget everything. When talking about future meetings in London, Lucy mentioned that she was now officially engaged to Hazelby, surprising Gregory. Lucy said goodbye to Gregory and decided to take a walk in the garden before her long journey. Gregory, though he wanted to accompany her, respected her desire to be alone. He watched her walk away, feeling confused and aware that something important remained unresolved between them. Chapter 13. A month later, Lucy found herself at an opulent dinner at Fensworth House, London. A week before her wedding, she had not seen her fiancé, Lord Hazelby, since their marriage had become imminent. She had asked her uncle for a meeting with him, and although Robert had reluctantly agreed, Lucy now regretted it. During the past few weeks, trapped in the house with her uncle and deaf aunt, she had been anxious for any news of Gregory Bridgerton. Though she knew she shouldn't, every night she watched the carriages go by, hoping to see him. That night, as they dined, Lucy noticed the oppressive presence of the Earl of Davenport, Hazelby's father. His behavior during dinner was humiliating and aggressive. He inspected Lucy as if she were a mare, asking inappropriate questions about her health and demanding that she recite the multiplication tables. Lucy, despite feeling offended, obediently answered, hoping to end the uncomfortable dinner. Hazelby tried to ease the tension with an encouraging smile, but his father remained relentless, emphasizing the obligations Lucy would have as a countess. Although dinner was a torment, Lucy recognized that Hazelby was pleasant and in other circumstances might have been a good choice. However, her mind couldn't stop thinking about Gregory Bridgerton. She had felt a genuine connection with him, and although Gregory had shown no intention of interrupting her engagement, she couldn't help but wish he would. Gregory's words and actions had left her confused and hurt, unable to forget that kiss. As dinner continued, Lucy tried to maintain her composure. Her uncle Robert finally changed the subject, talking about the upcoming wedding in London. Though it was a distraction, Lucy still felt overwhelmed by the oppressive atmosphere. At the end of dinner, Lucy reflected on her situation. Despite the difficult circumstances, she decided to focus on the positive and make the best of her future with Hazelby. However, the shadow of Gregory Bridgerton and what could have been continued to haunt her. Chapter 14. On his first day back in London, Gregory encountered Lucy Abernathy in Hyde Park. He had barely been walking for an hour when he saw her sitting on a bench, throwing pieces of bread to a flock of birds. Gregory had thought a lot about her since their farewell in Kent, and although he believed she was still at Fensworth Abbey, he wasn't surprised to find her in London. Gregory had arrived in the city the previous night, tired after a long journey. Upon waking, he found a radiant sun that encouraged him to go out. He loved the clean air after the rain, especially in London, where the fresh smell was unique. Despite having a comfortable suite in Marylebone, Gregory preferred the independence of his small abode to living with his mother or brother. The constant scrutiny of his mother, Violet Bridgerton, and the imposing presence of Anthony were exhausting. Gregory adored his family, but he needed his space. Seeing Lucy in Hyde Park, he remembered the day he found her in the garden at Aubrey Hall. She was also sitting on a bench, disheartened, probably after learning that her engagement had been finalized. Gregory wished she had told him then. If he had known she was engaged, he wouldn't have kissed her, as it went against his principles. As he approached Lucy, he noticed she was talking to the birds. He laughed at the scene, which caught Lucy's attention. They greeted each other cordially, and although she seemed hesitant at first, they soon regained their friendship. They sat together, sharing pieces of bread for the pigeons, and joking as before. The conversation flowed naturally, and Lucy felt comfortable, almost forgetting her situation. Gregory also enjoyed her company, finding in her a warmth and calmness that soothed him. They talked about their recent lives. Lucy mentioned she was in London for her wedding, which would be in a week. Gregory, surprised by the proximity of the event, congratulated her. Though Lucy noticed his reaction was a bit forced, they continued talking. Gregory invited her to a party his sister Daphne, the Duchess of Hastings, was organizing. Although Lucy wanted to attend, she knew her uncle and Lord Davenport wouldn't allow it. Gregory, determined to help her, assured her that he would make sure she could attend, trusting in his mother's persuasive power. They ended the conversation with a promise to see each other at the party. Lucy, though cautious, felt a spark of hope. Perhaps, just perhaps, she could enjoy one last moment of freedom before her imminent marriage. Chapter 15. Gregory was in the drawing room of his mother's house in London, a residence Violet Bridgerton had occupied since she decided to move after Anthony's wedding. The house, now much quieter since her youngest daughter also married, always seemed a bit empty to Gregory, who kept the habit of visiting at least twice a week when he was in town. Violet, always radiant, greeted him enthusiastically, eager to hear the latest news about Benedict, Sophie, and her grandchildren. Gregory shared the updates with special emphasis on little Violet, the granddaughter who bore her name, and then confessed to his mother that he had come to ask for a favor related to a young woman named Lucy. Despite his attempts not to arouse suspicion about his intentions, Violet quickly caught on to his interest. Convinced that helping Gregory would be easy, Violet was willing to intervene, assuring him that she could resolve Lucy's situation despite her uncle's opposition, with the ease that only an experienced mother like her could have. Violet's confidence in her ability to handle any situation with a mix of charm and cunning left Gregory impressed and grateful. As they had tea, Gregory reflected on his mother's ability to always be aware of her children's needs. Violet, for her part, grew nostalgic when talking about her late husband and how she wished all her children would choose their partners for love. The conversation turned into an introspection about Gregory's independence and his tendency to do things on his own, a trait Violet attributed to being one of the youngest in the family. The talk grew deeper when Violet pointed out that Gregory rarely asked for help, suggesting that this might be due to his desire to prove his worth to his older brothers. The observation left Gregory reflecting on his motivations and his relationship with his family, revealing a vulnerable side he didn't always show. The visit concluded with Violet preparing to leave, confident in her ability to handle Lucy's situation. Gregory, recognizing his mother's wisdom and unconditional love, bid her farewell with renewed admiration for her, aware that, although he would never be as clever as his mother, he would always have her support and unconditional love. Chapter 16. Violet Bridgerton's effectiveness in social matters was demonstrated when Gregory arrived at Hastings' house, and his sister Daphne, the Duchess, informed him that Lady Lucinda Abernathy would be attending the ball. Gregory couldn't help but feel excited. Lucy had looked so disappointed when she told him she couldn't go. Now she would have one last night of fun before marrying Hazelby. Gregory still couldn't believe he didn't know Lucy was going to marry Hazelby. Although Hazelby was a decent guy with acceptable wit, there was one problem. He didn't like women. Even if he treated Lucy well and gave her a generous allowance, she deserved much more. Gregory imagined Lucy's house filled with children, dogs, cats, and flowers, creating a colorful and lively home. As the ballroom filled up, Gregory searched for Lucy, but he didn't see her. Instead, he saw his mother, Violet, who approached him, praising his appearance. Despite his effort to downplay her words, Gregory recognized his mother's skill in gathering information. Violet mentioned her curiosity to meet Lady Lucinda, to which Gregory responded by emphasizing that Lucy was engaged and would be married soon. His younger sister Hyacinth joined the conversation, also curious to meet Lucy. Despite his sister's incisive questions, Gregory explained how he met Lucy in Kent and why he wanted her to attend the ball. Though he tried to reassure them, he noticed disbelief in their looks. While they talked, Gregory spotted Lucy across the room. He felt an irresistible attraction to her, similar to what he had felt for Hermione Watson, but different. This time, he was completely sure of his feelings. Lucy was more than a friend. She was everything he desired. When he finally approached her, the world seemed to clear up. Lucy's smile, directed at him, filled him with indescribable happiness. With a mix of euphoria and certainty, Gregory asked Lucy to grant him the next dance, making it clear that his love for her was real and deep. Chapter 17. For Lucy, dancing with Gregory in that dazzling ballroom was like being in heaven. Though there were no angels or harps, she felt she had reached paradise being in the arms of her true love, even knowing her wedding to another man was fast approaching. Her smile reflected the mix of feelings she felt as they twirled and spun on the dance floor. Gregory looked at her differently, and she, feeling bold and magical, decided not to share her thoughts, preferring to enjoy the night as a more impulsive and less conventional woman than she usually was. That night, she allowed herself to put aside her habit of planning every detail and simply enjoy the moment. As they danced, Gregory commented that she seemed different, and Lucy, feeling truly different, touched his hand when they crossed, which prompted an intense look from him, similar to the one he had directed at Hermione before. This time, however, there was something more in his eyes, something that made Lucy shiver and feel alive in a new way. When the music ended, Gregory led her to a side of the ballroom, away from the watchful eyes of the chaperones. He needed to talk to her alone, something he whispered as they approached Aunt Harriet. Although initially resistant, Lucy couldn't deny Gregory, and they agreed to meet in the library. The appearance of Hyacinth, Gregory's younger sister, changed the dynamic. With overwhelming energy, Hyacinth introduced herself to Lucy and quickly deduced that there was more between her brother and Lucy. With a calculating look, Hyacinth decided she would help the two, devising a plan for them to meet alone. Lucy was amazed by Hyacinth's ability to discreetly and quickly tear her dress, thus justifying the need to repair it in private. As they ascended to Daphne's chamber, Hyacinth proved to be an inexhaustible source of information about Gregory, revealing personal details Lucy didn't know. Hyacinth's help, though unexpected, turned out to be crucial for Gregory and Lucy to talk without interruptions. In the intimacy of the room, Gregory confessed to Lucy that she shouldn't marry Hazelby, explaining Hazelby's true nature and lack of interest in women. The news shocked Lucy but also sparked a glimmer of hope. Gregory finally declared his love for her, and Lucy, moved and excited, responded with her own feelings. With a mix of bravery and determination, Lucy decided to confront her uncle the next day and break her engagement with Hazelby. Gregory, full of love and devotion, knelt and asked her to marry him. Lucy's response was a resounding yes, sealing her promise with a kiss full of love and hope for the future. Chapter 18. Lucy stood before her uncle's study door, her fist clenched, ready to knock. However, she couldn't do it. She had been there long enough to feel ridiculous and cowardly. At school, she had always been pragmatic and capable, but in front of her Uncle Robert, everything changed. He was severe and taciturn, very different from her always cheerful father. She took a deep breath and squared her shoulders. This time, she would be heard. She knocked on the door and entered the study, dark despite the evening sun. Her uncle barely looked up from his papers when she said she needed to talk to him about Lord Hazelby. When she finally got his attention, Lucy stammered and asked if he knew that Lord Hazelby didn't like women. Her uncle's reaction was to laugh. He told her of course he knew, and that was precisely why his father was eager to marry him off to Lucy, because he knew she wouldn't speak out. The conversation grew tenser. Lucy, with newfound determination, told him she didn't want to marry Lord Hazelby. Her uncle, irritated and with a cold look, asked why. Nervous, Lucy replied that she wanted to have children. Her uncle, with an icy smile, assured her that she would have them, whether from Hazelby or from his father, Lord Davenport, who would take care of it if necessary. Panic seized Lucy when her uncle explained that everyone had their place in life and her duty was to provide an heir to the Davenport family. With horror, Lucy realized her uncle wouldn't let her escape that fate. She tried to reason, saying they didn't need the money or the connections, but her uncle pushed her against the wall, holding her tightly, and revealed that her marriage was the last payment of a blackmail debt Lord Davenport had with the family, a debt that started with her father, the 8th Earl of Fensworth, who had been a traitor. The news was a devastating blow. Lucy couldn't believe it, but her uncle assured her there was proof. Letters with her father's seal containing information only he could know. For 10 years, her uncle had been paying Davenport to keep the secret, and Lucy's marriage to Hazelby would end that blackmail. Overwhelmed, Lucy thought of Gregory and what she felt for him, but realized she had no choice. If she defied Davenport, her family would be ruined, and she couldn't condemn her brother Richard to a life of dishonor and poverty. Finally, defeated and exhausted, she agreed to marry Hazelby. She didn't cry upon receiving the news, nor when the butler told her Gregory was there to see her and she shook her head. But when she saw Gregory from the window, looking puzzled and angry, she let the curtain drop and felt the weight of her decision. In the end, she lay on the bed and finally cried. Chapter 19. Gregory was desperate and had visited Lucy at Fensworth House 3 times without success. Time was running out, and Lucy's wedding to Lord Hazelby was imminent. Gregory was convinced Lucy loved him, but something was terribly wrong. He had searched for her in the park and watched her house, but she hadn't appeared. Finally, he managed to see her briefly through a window, and her hurried and frantic behavior confirmed his suspicions. Desperate and determined, Gregory hid outside Fensworth House, watching the window he believed was Lucy's. He reflected on his easy life and lack of effort up until that moment. But now he understood he had to fight for Lucy. He crossed the street and entered the house through the service door he found open. He moved stealthily, barefoot, through the house until he reached the 2nd floor, where he believed Lucy's room was. Entering the room, he discovered it was empty. However, the rumpled sheets and the mark on the pillow indicated someone had been there recently. Before he could react, a candelabra flew towards him. He managed to partially dodge it and heard Lucy's voice. She was there, bewildered and scared, but Gregory reassured her. Gregory insisted Lucy shouldn't marry Lord Hazelby and asked her to stay with him. Lucy, sad and desperate, tried to resist but finally confessed she would resign herself to her fate. However, Gregory couldn't accept this. He knew Lucy wouldn't be happy and begged her to let him help her. In a moment of vulnerability, Lucy finally admitted she loved him and gave in to her feelings. They kissed passionately, setting aside all doubts and fear. Gregory led her to the bed, and in a burst of passion, they gave themselves to each other. They both knew this might be the only time they would be together in this way, but at that moment, only the love and desire they felt existed. Gregory promised her eternal love, And Lucy, though she knew she was lying about her future with Hazelby, let herself be carried away by the moment. It was her only chance for happiness, and she decided to seize it, giving herself completely to Gregory. The night was intense, filled with passion and love, a reminder of what she could never have again. Chapter 20. After a night full of passion and intimate moments, it was time for Gregory to leave Lucy's room. Though difficult, he did so with a heart full of hope. He knew this wasn't the end and that they would soon be together. But dawn was breaking, and he didn't want Lucy to face the embarrassment of being found with him in bed on the morning of her wedding to another man. Before departing, Gregory tried to persuade Lucy to run away with him before the servants awoke. She, however, decided to stay and face the situation with honor, demonstrating her pragmatic and brave character. Despite his fears, Gregory understood and respected her decision. They agreed on a signal. If Lucy needed help, she would go to the window and make a specific gesture with her hand. Gregory left the room stealthily, and once in the park in front of Fensworth House, he decided not to abandon his post. He knew that if Lucy needed his help, he had to be there. To ensure he wasn't alone in this vigil, he sent a young chimney sweep with a message to his brother Colin, who soon arrived to support him. As they waited, Gregory and Colin saw the house filling with activity. The tension increased as the wedding hour approached, and there were no signs of Lucy asking for help. The crucial moment came when the family and servants began to leave the house. Gregory's heart sank when he saw Lucy, dressed as a bride, walking out on her own and smiling. The scene felt like a direct blow to Gregory's heart. The betrayal he felt was palpable. Colin, with compassion, tried to console his brother. Gregory recalled the signal, desperately searching for any indication that Lucy needed his help. But the signal never came. Despair and disbelief overwhelmed Gregory. He couldn't understand why Lucy hadn't asked for his help, but he refused to believe she had deliberately betrayed him. His love for her was deep, and despite the pain, he decided not to give up. As the bridal carriage disappeared from sight, Gregory, with renewed determination, looked at Colin and, without a word, started running, determined to find Lucy and understand what had truly happened. Chapter 21. Lucy, standing in front of St. George's Church, contemplates the bright stained glass windows, the elegant arches, and the abundant flowers brought for her wedding. She thinks of Lord Hazelby, her future husband, and the more than 300 guests waiting for her entrance. She also thinks of Gregory, who surely saw her get into the bridal carriage. Hermione, always romantic and impractical, asks if she is ready, and although Lucy knows her friend would tell her not to go through with it, she nods because it is the only thing she can do. Richard, her brother, joins them, joking about her age and reminding her of his recent wedding to Hermione. As she prepares, Lucy feels empty, having left Gregory under the false belief that she would cancel the wedding. It was cruel and dishonest, but she found no other way out without sacrificing her family. Trying to convince herself she could do it, Hermione, concerned, asks if something is wrong, to which Lucy replies with an excuse about doing sums in her head. Hermione, surprised, notes that Lucy is acting out of the ordinary. Richard and Hermione encourage her, but Lucy feels like she is saying goodbye to herself and everything that could have been. Finally, it is time to start, and as Hermione kisses her on the cheek and wishes her happiness, Lucy enters the chapel. At the altar, bowing her head before the parson, Lucy tries not to think about Gregory and repeats the marriage vows firmly. However, at the crucial moment, the chapel doors burst open and Gregory appears, advancing towards her with determination. His declaration of love stops time, leaving Lucy motionless and speechless. The tension grows as Gregory pleads with her not to marry Hazelby, declaring his love for her. Lucy looks at Hazelby, seeking some advice, but he simply shakes his head, leaving the decision to her. Gregory kneels and proposes to her, but Lucy, battling her feelings and the circumstances surrounding her family, utters a painful no. Chapter 22. Chaos erupted immediately. Lord Davenport lunged at Gregory, followed by Lucy's uncle and Gregory's brother, who had chased Gregory all over Mayfair. While Richard moved Hermione and Lucy away from the tumult, Lord Hazelby, with unusual calm, took Lucy by the arm and said he would take care of her. Lucy, shocked, stepped back as Lord Davenport and Gregory clashed violently. Hyacinth St. Clair, with a purse, hit Davenport, adding more confusion to the scene. Lucy closed her eyes, trying to process the situation. Hazelby, with astonishing serenity, joked about the chaotic scene while the Prime Minister also struggled to defend himself against a woman with a fruit hat slapping everyone around her. Lucy, surprised by Hazelby's tranquility, could hardly believe what she was seeing. Hazelby, observing everything with curiosity, explained that he wanted to see what she would do. Lucy, astonished, didn't know how to respond. Meanwhile, Gregory kept fighting to free himself from the men trying to restrain him and, with great effort, reached the foot of the altar steps, looking at her with desperation. Lucy trembled as Gregory asked why she was doing this. Trying to justify her decision, she murmured that she had to do it. Gregory, disappointed but determined, tried to approach her but was ultimately dragged out of the church. Hyacinth St. Clair, furious, accused Lucy of being weak and unworthy of her brother, while Lady Bridgerton intervened and took her daughter away. Dazed, Lucy was led back to the altar. Despite the disorder, she married Hazelby. In Lady Bridgerton's carriage, Gregory was silent while his mother and brothers discussed what had happened. Hyacinth, furious, proposed taking revenge against Lucy, but Gregory, with a firm voice, ordered his family to leave her alone. Though they didn't understand his motives, he was sure that Lucy loved him, but something stronger than her feelings had forced her to go through with the wedding. Violet Bridgerton, trying to console Gregory, suggested he leave the city to avoid the scandal. However, Gregory couldn't stop thinking about what had forced Lucy to marry. The words, "because I had to," echoed in his mind. Finally, Gregory decided to step out of the carriage to get some air, promising not to do anything foolish. As the carriage stopped, Colin, in a serious tone, asked him not to do anything reckless. Gregory, determined to find answers, began to walk away from St. George, but in the next street, turned around and started running, determined to discover the truth. Chapter 23. Lucy had never seen her uncle throw a party in the 10 years she had been living with him, which reflected his aversion to unnecessary expenses. However, that day a lavish party was being held in her honor at Fensworth House, probably organized by Lord Davenport. After the wedding, Lucy was quickly taken to her old room to wash her face before going down to greet the guests. As she greeted and received congratulations, Lucy reflected on how well the aristocracy pretended nothing had happened. She knew that the next day everyone would talk about her as that one from the wedding, but at that moment they only said pleasant and flattering things. Now she was Lady Hazelby, though she couldn't help but think about how different it would have been to be Lady Lucinda Bridgerton. She imagined a joyful and fulfilling life as Mrs. Bridgerton, full of laughter and warmth, but she knew that wouldn't be her reality. The party progressed and Lucy fulfilled her duties, dancing with her new husband, her brother, and her uncle. Each encounter filled her with more sadness and resignation, especially her uncle's words, congratulating her for doing the right thing. During the dance with Lord Davenport, her new father-in-law, Lucy listened disinterestedly to his praises as he spoke effusively, spraying her with saliva. The party buzzed, but Lucy managed to avoid most of the guests, including her husband and her friend Hermione, to avoid questions that would make her cry. She found refuge in a corner and, after a while, sneaked back to her room to rest. She closed the door behind her and collapsed, wanting to cry but unable to do so, too numb from the recent events. Then, a familiar voice startled her. Gregory, disheveled and dirty, he had entered the house like the night before, determined to know why she had married. Lucy tried to maintain her composure, but Gregory looked at her with an intensity that disarmed her. He wanted to know why she had married Lord Hazelby and couldn't let her go without an answer. Desperate, Lucy confessed that she couldn't tell him the truth. Gregory, convinced she was being blackmailed, promised he could help her. But Lucy, furious, told him he didn't understand the gravity of the situation. Finally, Gregory pressed her. Did she love him? Lucy, broken inside, admitted that she did, but insisted they couldn't be together. Gregory, strengthened by her confession, proposed they run away together before the marriage was consummated and became irreversible. Despite her resistance, Gregory, moved by love, grabbed her and ran out of the room, determined to save her from an unhappy future. Chapter 24. Lucy was furious as Gregory tied her hands with skillful and firm knots. He had hidden her in a restroom on the 3rd floor, a place where he thought no one would look for hours. She struggled against the bindings, unsuccessfully. Gregory tried to calm her, but his determination to be together kept her tied to the restroom pipe. Gregory promised to marry her, insisting that she hadn't yet consummated her marriage with Lord Hazelby, which allowed for an annulment. Lucy, desperate and aware of the disgrace it would bring to her family, begged him to let her return. Gregory, however, did not relent. He wanted to know why she had decided to marry Hazelby. Finally, Lucy told him everything about the blackmail, her father's betrayal, and how her family's fate depended on her marriage to Hazelby. Gregory, shocked, understood the gravity of the situation. Despite his repulsion at the act of betrayal, he reaffirmed his love for Lucy and his desire to save her. He asked for an hour to find a solution, promising to release her if he couldn't achieve anything. Lucy, doubtful but hopeful, agreed. Gregory left determined to save Lucy, looking for someone who could help. In Lucy's room, he found Hermione, Lucy's best friend. After a brief explanation, Hermione joined Gregory in his mission. Together, they talked to Lord Hazelby and Lucy's brother, Richard. Hazelby, surprisingly cooperative, agreed to release Lucy from the commitment, though he warned about his father's reaction. While Richard and Hazelby went to confront Hazelby's father, Gregory and Hermione went to find Lucy in the restroom. Upon arrival, they discovered she was not there. The room was empty, indicating that Lucy hadn't escaped on her own. Chapter 25. Lucy was furious and nervous, sitting in the restroom with her hands tied. She had lost track of time, but she was sure an hour had passed. As she tried to distract herself by drumming her fingers, she heard footsteps approaching. Her heart raced with a mix of hope and fear. The door burst open, revealing her Uncle Robert, who looked at her with fury. He called her a whore, and although Lucy tried to explain she had been kidnapped, her uncle didn't believe her and interrogated her about Gregory. Lucy said she didn't know where he was, but her uncle, enraged, cut her bindings and forced her to stand. With one hand on the knife pressing against her side, her uncle led her out of the restroom. As he dragged her, Lucy tried to understand his intentions. He told her the marriage would continue and that he would personally ensure it was consummated that night, even with spectators if necessary. Upon reaching a room, Robert tied her up again and blindfolded her before leaving her there. Lucy, desperate, tried to understand her uncle's reasons. Why would he do something so cruel? But when he responded that she had always been a duty to him, everything became clear. He had never really cared about her. Shortly after, Gregory and Hermione arrived at the place where Lucy should have been, only to find the restroom empty. Realizing someone had taken her, they started searching for her. Hermione suggested she might be in her uncle's office or bedroom, and Gregory headed there. In the bedroom, Gregory found Lucy, still tied up and blindfolded, with her uncle pointing a gun at her. Gregory ordered him to release her, but Robert, full of rage and desperation, did not relent. Gregory kept calm, trying to reason with him, saying they could keep his secret. Robert, emotionally unstable, finally confessed that it had all been a lie. It wasn't Lucy's father who was the traitor, but himself. Just when it seemed the situation might calm down, a group of people, including Richard, Hazelby, and Lord Davenport, burst into the room, and in the chaos, Robert fired, wounding Lucy. Gregory, filled with panic, shot Robert, wounding him in the shoulder. Amid the chaos, Gregory managed to pull Lucy from under her uncle's body and, with relief, discovered she was not seriously injured. After the chaos, Lord Hazelby and Gregory reached an agreement to annul Lucy's marriage. Hazelby was understanding and, although he acknowledged he would have to find a new wife, he accepted the situation with grace. Finally, as everything calmed down, Gregory took Lucy's hand and kissed it, promising to love and protect her always. Although the day had been long and full of challenges, Gregory's love for Lucy had only grown stronger. Epilogue. The first time Gregory found himself waiting outside Lucy's room, he was a bundle of nerves. The second time, the anxiety was even greater as he better understood what was happening. Lucy, meticulous as ever, spared him no details, which only increased his worry with every little noise he heard. Gregory considered himself lucky that men couldn't give birth, for if that were possible, humanity would have disappeared generations ago. Nonetheless, Lucy seemed to accept the process with bravery and enthusiasm, sharing the experience with Gregory whenever she had the chance. By the third time, Gregory was more serene, although he still held his breath with every groan he heard. The fourth time he brought a book, and the fifth only a newspaper, as the process became faster with each child. The sixth birth completely surprised him, as he had gone out to visit a friend and returned to find Lucy with the baby in her arms and a serene smile on her face. Lucy never let him forget his absence at the sixth birth, so Gregory made sure to be present for the seventh. Although he had to leave his post by the door briefly to fetch a snack, he didn't miss the event. For Gregory, 7 children were enough. He even joked with Lucy, saying they no longer remembered how she looked without being pregnant. She, with her usual cheekiness, reminded him it was his responsibility. Gregory couldn't contradict her and went to visit his sister Hyacinth, explaining why 7 children were the ideal number, though she didn't share his enthusiasm. 6 months after the 7th, Lucy timidly informed him she was expecting another baby. Gregory, though worried, accepted the news and decided this would be their last child. He decided to accompany Lucy throughout the birth, to the horror of the midwife. The doctor, observing Lucy's calm and skill, commented that his presence was almost unnecessary. Indeed, when the time came, Lucy put aside her embroidery work and, with a small grunt, gave birth. Gregory, looking at the newborn baby, was surprised by how quick and uncomplicated it had been. But Lucy, with anguish, felt something was wrong. The doctor checked and discovered another baby was on the way. With amazement, Gregory saw his 9th child being born. The revelation left him dizzy. 9 children, just one more to reach 10. 10 children meant double digits, a significant achievement. He needed to sit down, overwhelmed by the reality. Lucy, disheveled and with swollen eyes, smiled languidly at him, assuring him that at least his mother would be happy. Gregory, almost unable to think, looked at his wife and felt a surge of love and admiration. 9 children, he thought, were 9 times wonderful, and that was more than he had ever imagined. He smiled. Love existed, and it was truly wonderful. And so we conclude our literary journey for today. I hope you enjoyed this journey through the chapters of On the Way to the Wedding, and that it left you eager to learn more about the characters and their stories. Don't forget to leave your comments and share your thoughts about the book. We love to hear what you think. If you liked the video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of our future summaries. You can also activate the bell to receive notifications every time we upload a new video. Thank you for joining us on Literary Journeys with River. Until the next literary adventure.